All right. How is everyone doing? Can I get like a woo? Shake your wiggles out or whatever they say from my kindergartner's class. Good morning. We've got our second session before we head into our lunch break. For those of you that weren't there this morning, I'm Liz Gardner. I am the chair for this year's B-Civic Summit and do local government affairs and community relations for Xcel Energy. So thank you so much for being here. I'm not going to talk long except for to introduce the amazing panelists that we have joining us this morning. Really the theme or the topic for this session is the intersection of CSR, DEI, and ERGs. So, or employee resource groups, BRGs, business resource groups. I think there's about 50 different acronyms for it. And so Leah and the team at Mile High United Way put together an amazing group of panelists to really dive into this conversation and I think give more both sort of the high level vision, thought, and also how it looks in implementation. So I will read a little bit about each of these four women and then I will turn it over to Leah. So, Leah, I didn't ask how to pronounce your last name.
Devereaux.
That's what I was going to guess. Okay. Leah Devereaux is the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at Mile High United Way. In her role, she oversees the implementation of Mile High United Way's new partnerships and their corporate social responsibility initiatives. Yante Johnson is an accomplished corporate social responsibility professional, proud DEI leader, certified life coach. I need to call you about that. Speaker, entrepreneur, and the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Access manager at SSA Group. She is a vibrant individual with I love this word, enigmatic. How would you say that? Did I say that wrong? Personality that exudes professionalism and brings a sense of calm and structure to all she encounters. Tasha Jones is the president and founder of LV Jones Consulting that drives diverse marketing strategy and campaigns for inclusive company brands. Ms. Jones leads in developing world-class integrated marketing strategy in order to tell a brand story with diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. Her approach helps shine a light on the importance of BIPOC representation in marketing, messaging, and visuals. My colleague, Bonnie Gross, is the social investments representative at Xcel Energy, where she manages all of our employee volunteer projects and engagement in Colorado. Bonnie produces Xcel Energy's Day of Service, which is the company's largest corporate-wide volunteer effort and leads our Employee Connection Network business resource groups. As a reminder, all of these sessions are being recorded, so you will be able to access them after the summit, and we will, I believe, save some time at the end of the presentation for audience Q&A. So for our folks online, if you have any questions, put those in the chat and we'll get those answered live in the room as well. And again, don't forget, share your learnings, take photos, and tag B-Civic on your social platforms. So with that, I will turn it over to you all. Thank you so much.
You turn them on. Thank you so much, and thank you for having us. We're really excited to have this topic this year. Have wonderful ladies, and we've worked with them at Mile High United Way plenty of times, and really enjoy just the strategy that goes on with our conversations. I'm going to move this on. We've met all of us, so I'm going to move to the next slide, kind of just showing what we're talking about today, right? We have how can we focus on the community impacts that strengthen and help develop our ERGs? How do ERGs support diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging work? And then also recommendations for those companies maybe who are early in their CSR, DEI, and ERG learnings. And that's why I'll pop in a little bit of some stuff we're doing at Mile High United Way to help with that. We'll do Q&A and then also just different ways to get involved. I want to start with, I know there's a lot of acronyms, and I feel like this was the other session as well I was in. They kind of like have a whole slide on acronyms. We will be sending this out after, I believe, so no need to like scribble it all down, but we do have a few here. Affinity groups is what we use at Mile High United Way, and a few other folks I know who use affinity groups as their term for their employee resource groups. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. ERGs, employee resource groups. DEB, diversity, equity, and belonging. Corporate social responsibilities at CSR, we all know that one. BRGs, business resource groups. IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And ESG, environmental, social governance. So we will start with our first question. We'll start with Bonnie here. How can a focus on community impact strengthen or help develop ERGs?
Thank you. It's so nice to see everybody here. Before we delve into this question, I just thought it would be nice to set a little bit of groundwork and context to Excel Energy and honestly our business resource groups. I think you all are probably familiar with Excel, many customers in the room, hopefully. But you know, we're not like the sexiest company, right? We're a regulated utility. My job is the fun part, right? We get to really make sure that we are seen as more than just an energy provider and utility company. So for me, it's really exciting to work with, we call them business resource groups or BRGs. We love a good acronym at Excel. But really to match our employees and business resource groups with nonprofits, issues, projects that align with those values. You know, you've heard this a lot today. The landscape in business with business resource groups as a woman of color in the community has changed a ton since pre-pandy, right? Like things are a lot different. So where I'm seeing Excel right now, and full disclosure, we are totally restructuring and reframing what a business resource group looks like at Excel Energy. So with that comes a reframing and alignment, which you've heard a lot this morning from other speakers on how do we utilize this group, how do we structure it, and how do we align it to our CSR strategies to make an impact. At Excel, we have over 11,000 employees across the country in 8 states. So it's a huge footprint. In Colorado, I think, Liz, 3,800-ish employees across the state, ranging from jobs on the corporate side to field and frontline workers. So a very diverse mix of folks. Where we found our BRGs, which we have 12 now, are really providing a space for people to connect and find community and connection at a big company like this. So kind of looking at the reframing and restructuring post-pandemic, each of our business resource groups have been allowed and empowered, actually is a better word, to identify their values, their mission statements that work with their group. I really applaud our company for not taking this cookie cutter broad sweep approach to everyone, knowing things are different per group, per community, per individual. And my job is really being to introduce and align each of those business resource groups with an issue that is important with them. So selfishly, it helps my CSR strategy, our employee engagement, to be able to connect our business resource groups and those folks with issues that are important to them.
My name is Yante Johnson. I work for the SSA Group. We are a hospitality organization in the cultural attraction space. We are nationwide with over 9,000 employees. The SSA Group has a naturally organic, diverse culture and organization. Over 60% of our organization is women. Over 50% are minority groups. And we have been doing DEI before it was a thing. In terms of how community impact affects or enhances ERGs, I'd have to state that the ERGs are the community. They are the community in your business. And where your employees live and work should be essentially important to you. Their issues are important to you. It is an organization's duty to serve the community through their ERGs. You also give your community a voice through your employee resource groups. You give your opportunity for your employees to speak up to their leadership, and you can cascade that out and affect policies, social services, and a number of different things. Use your ERGs as the footprint for community service and community impact.
I think that's really well said. And first, I just want to say that I find light and heat and electricity really sexy. So thank you, Excel. I do not take you for granted. And I do have I know that is on the video, Excel. Thank you. And so I do have the distinct honor of working with Yante. They are one of my clients, and I only work with organizations who are committed on their idea journey, their DEI journey, their DEP journey, their JETI journey. And, you know, what you all are doing for sure is pretty remarkable in terms of being really accountable and how you're embracing community throughout the organization. And the only thing I think I'd add to what's already been said, I mean, Bonnie, what you mentioned about how, what did you call it, pandy? Pre-pandy? Anyway, so like what's happened is, you know, there has been this shift, there has been this recognition of all these different cultures and people and this time for us to show up as our whole selves. And I say what ERGs give our organizations the opportunity to do is to really uphold our commitment to DEI. And so that notion of it's where community lives, it's where people can belong and identify and have a safe space. And I think what's really, really critical in your ERGs, especially, hi Corey, hi Sarah. What's really, really important in this idea of the power of ESG is making sure that now more than ever, again, that notion that you cannot make it a checkbox, just doesn't work. And the customization is so important. And if you're going to customize it, what are the critical tasks for your ERG? What are the goals that they need to set? How are they going to, you know, follow through on those goals? And how are they going to measure? You know, I always like to talk with organization, like, so who's responsible? Who's accountable? You know, I'm getting at who's supporting. I feel like Rossi, whatever you call it, I feel like that's so important for ERGs as they're organizing how they're going to be effective and really carry those commitments forward. And then in terms of the approach, again, I can't emphasize enough, goals, having a charter, a mission, and a meeting schedule, you know, that's your way that you turn that vision for the group into action, and it really can follow through on what the organization's commitments are, and not just for DEI, but also for CSR, right? And then I just have to say, how do you recognize the employees who are stepping up, wanting to drive your commitment forward by being the chair of your ERG? And then most critical to that is, who are the executives that are sponsoring? You heard in the session before this one that executive sponsorship, that executive level engagement, that top-down commitment is so critical. So how are executives sitting at the table on these ERGs and being really vested, not just listening, but being partners, advisory, and supporters?
So important. Okay, the next focus here, we're going to ask you guys, how do ERGs support diversity, equity, and inclusion in belonging work? And we'll start with Bonnie again.
Great. Well, I think we kind of touched on this earlier. We'll pull up that next slide because we have some great photos. Again, our ERGs, our business resource groups, are kind of that bread and butter and woven into the DE&I focus that has now really transcended across the company in all of our 8 states. So I threw up there some photos. The one on the far left, this was just last week. We had 150 employees come out for a Diwali celebration. We stood up the Asian American Pacific Islander Alliance, BRG, and they hosted an amazing event. We had executive sponsors there, which was amazing. And I was like, God, I haven't seen 150 Excel employees in one spot showing up on a Tuesday since 2020, right? So that was really impactful. In the middle, we have our Tribal Wind Chair, which is our Native American business resource group. They accepted a prestigious award this year for their work and commitment to doing good in the community. And then I had to throw in my favorite business resource group, Excelente, which I think has the best name ever, up there, who regularly shows up for our volunteer projects. So again, kind of reemphasizing, BRGs provide a space for employees to share, connect, and learn. And I think an important part that we've talked a lot about are bringing allies along there. I think now more than ever, we're seeing the importance of not only building community, but allies showing up, being advocates and being that support. And in a large company like Xcel Energy, which we're getting there with diversity hiring, but let's be real, the energy and industry is very white male leaning. This is so important. So I also wanted to point out we have a Council for Diversity and Inclusion, which is made up of individuals from each BRG. This is a space where those leaders can kind of come together, brainstorm, talk across. I think it's important not to operate in silos, to offer those spaces for collaboration. And something I wanted to bring up too is those meetings, we call them safe harbor spaces. So on those meetings, you can ask uncomfortable questions. You can bring up concerns that maybe you don't feel comfortable airing out. It's a space to learn and build that camaraderie. And I think it's been a really kind of low-key, under the radar, employee-built resource that's been really important. And I think too, real quick, the idea of executive sponsorship is huge. Each of our business resource groups has an executive sponsor that works and meets with folks. It's hugely important to, they said it this morning, write it on the wall, make the coffee mug. But if you don't have that leadership that has your back, that is advocating for what the business resource group is doing and supporting those employees, I mean, we can all sniff out something that's very inauthentic and disingenuous, right? So I think bringing along those employees to build the group, having the support top down, but providing that space for uncomfortable conversations has been really important for us.
And Yante, let me know when you want to go to the next slide, because I think I skipped a slide. I want to make sure we're covering all the content.
We're on the right slide. Some of you in this room know me, I'm a rebel. So me sitting in this chair is like driving me a little nuts. So I may have to just break the rules just a little bit. So I'm gonna go over here like a talk show. Because I get really excited about this work. This is my passion. This is my life. This is before it was a role. I was out in my community. I lived in a community that was 98% white with my African-American children. I still live in that environment. I was able to bring about a lot of unconscious bias training into my school district, address some of the curriculum just as a mom. So moving the needle in my communities and then in my workplace. So employee resource groups, as I stated, are the community within the larger community. Diversity is the ways in which we differ. Equity is creating fair access, which I have a great story to help you understand that one. Inclusion is the collective effort. So that's the action of moving the needle along. And then belonging is the outcome of all these efforts combined. Let me tell you my story about equity real quick. A lot of people confuse equity with equality. They're not the same thing. Equity, picture a fence, and we're all different sizes, heights, and we're all trying to catch this view. I call it, since I work in the cultural attraction space, we're gonna say the rhino exhibit, right? And we got a tall guy, we got a short gal, we got an average sized person, but no one has the great view as the tall guy. With equality, we'd give everyone the same step stool and bring them up to the same level, but no one still has that excellent view. Equity is literally customizing that step stool so that everyone has the same view. ERGs are a combination, it's a melting pot. But for us at SSA, which by the way, I have some cool names for my ERGs, Melevated for the African American group, Empower Her for our women, Pride for our LGBTQ+, and Hispanos USSA. We also have implemented our belonging already into our organization. And we've done these through what we call DICE chapters. DICE chapters are a collection of all different people, every ethnicity, race, disability, access, socioeconomic status, within our business units collectively coming together, integrating, serving their community together, and that has created Together We Belong, We Are the Same, I See Me, and SSA. When Bonnie was talking about ERGs and the importance of executive sponsorship, that creates an allyship. Pick your most uncomfortable, stiff executive to sponsor someone, a group that he normally in his natural environment would not experience. That's how you create the change. At SSA, I've removed the word safe haven from my ERGs. There is no need for these conversations for us to have to feel safe to talk about matters of our life and our experience. That's when you know that you've moved into the belonging space in idea plus belonging. Thank you.
Tasha?
Yeah, that was kind of a mic drop. They should not feel safe. You should just belong there, right? But they are sacred and special places. And I love, I did write that they're safe spaces, but I'm going to change that. They're sacred and they're special because it's a place where folks who are traditionally underserved or marginalized can see representation and can also be connected to that allyship, but also to be introduced to opportunities in the organization in ways that they maybe hadn't been exposed to before. That's been my personal experience with an ERG when I used to work for Forest City, so a large corporate company based out of Cleveland, Ohio, that later got acquired by Brookfield. I remember getting tapped after giving a presentation to a bunch of executives, and like, we need to get her on. We're getting ready to launch these ARGs. Let's get her on this, be part of this strategic. And I joined, and then I got invited to be part of like the executive group who started to put it together. And then I kept being invited back to corporate to present as we were unveiling programs. But I say that to say, like, I had this personal experience with how, and the ARG or the ERG experience exposed me to new ways of looking at how the company operated, and also got me connected to new executive sponsors who I would have never had conversations with before. I think they're really powerful that way. And I think it's also important to note how they build skills. They build skills and they build knowledge around, if you're just going to be real, they're going to not be safe spaces, but real spaces that are sacred and special, you got to have conversations around impacts of systemic racism. You just have to, because they're real. And you got to understand the lived experiences of your teammates, what they're going through. And I think what that does is that helps foster that notion of allyship, but not just a notion, but what can we all do to make sure that we mitigate exclusionary practices that might be happening in our organization? How do we help speak up when we say, hey, how are we hiring for this position? Who are we reaching out to? Does everyone know all the candidates who submitted an application? Do all the candidates who are diverse, do we know who all submitted that opportunity? I've seen that happen where people didn't realize all the candidates that put their name in the hat. And so I think ERGs create an opportunity for listening and exchanging and sharing and finding ways that you can collectively advocate for those underserved and marginalized groups.
I love that. Thank you so much. This was a really good question. And finally, and I feel like we touched on it a little bit, but recommendations for companies that are early in their CSR, DEI, and ERG planning. I mean, this is a big one, right, for people who are really stepping into this space. So we will go first with Bonnie.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about it. I think structure is hugely important. I think you can't apply the same kind of cookie cutter approach to everything, but I think it's really helpful to provide some fence or grounding that people can fluctuate and create within. For us, knowing our Excelente BRG in Colorado might look different and have some different values and initiatives that they want to do versus our Minneapolis chapter. So I think being okay with that is great. Kind of going back to this morning, I think it's really important to think about how are the groups and the work that they're doing moving forward business and the initiatives, not only in CSR, but I think in hiring. And I think we've been really fortunate to be able to push forward on having some different representation on some of our hiring panels. So that's a really nice win that the business resource groups were able to participate in. You know, I think we all like to be asked how we like to do things. So I think it's really important to have this collaborative process and bring folks to the table, not only ask input, but engage, invite people. I think that makes a huge difference. Again, we talked about executive level. I can't stress that enough. That's really important. You can be doing great things, but if leadership doesn't know or they don't care, does it really have an impact or matter? And I think it's okay to not know everything. I really credit our company with taking a step back and being like, we need to reframe and restructure how we're doing things. I'm actually going to Minnesota later this month with different heads of the business resource groups for a 2-day summit to really frame out and plan for the next year what that's going to look like. And again, be flexible and adapt. That's huge. I think, again, looking back at how things were, the traditional models, and realizing they weren't really working for how our employees are working, the current landscape for and needs for employees right now are different. So it's okay to flex and adapt and change things. So those are my takeaways. And if anyone has questions, you know, I'm still figuring all this stuff out too. So if you have any tips, happy to chat too.
Deontay?
Awesome. I'm going to kind of stare off of my slides a little bit because I'm in idea plus belonging space, but I'm also a corporate social responsibility professional. I started an organization that already had a corporate giving program in place and very rigid in structure in terms of where we gave. And during my time there, I started realizing that, you know, you have to also give in that diversity and inclusion space. And if you don't have a diverse lens, utilize your ERGs, which we implemented, to direct their giving. Set aside some funds in your corporate giving program for your employee resource groups so that they can direct their contributions to causes that are important to them. It gives your employees buy-in in the company. It lets them know that you are invested in them. It also lets the community know that you're invested in them versus having someone who doesn't live, work, or struggle in the community tell you where you should direct your resources. Unfortunately, oftentimes we miss that part and we give to organizations that can give us the biggest PR footprint. And that is really takes away from the whole idea of charitable giving. So I have to suggest aligning your ERGs with your corporate giving program. And my new organization, we don't have a formal corporate giving program. So guess what I get to do? And I think it's very beautiful that my organization trusts me not only as a corporate social responsibility professional, but as someone who has a vested interest and passion in communities across the country to direct of where we should invest our money. I have already started establishing relationships with organizations across the country because I recognize that, number one, my employees, where we give, also will impact some of the services that they can receive. That's why I love my Ohio United Way. I know that when I give, I know that I'm not only going to give my employees an opportunity to volunteer, but some of my lower income employees will be able to utilize the services right there in their community. And I can call on them for help and support no matter where my employees are in that country. When you are building your ERGs or your corporate social responsibility program, identify, you know, what your motives are. Is it just to say, hey, we're in this D&I space? Or is it actually built on something human-based? Identify that human-based strategy that you're going to implement with your company. Then you need to move forward and establish your values and your commitments in this space. So if you state, I'm going to hire this many diverse people, and I look at your strategy, I'm going to say, hey, you're checking a box. And for people like me, I don't want to be a box that you check off. I want to be able to grow in your organization. I want to be able to feel valued. I want to belong. I want to have a career trajectory there. Have some value in what you're building there and your commitments to not just diversity, but retention, professional development, and human resource policies in place that actually effectively protect underrepresented populations, because that is a reality in the world that we still live in corporate America. Seek out your champions. Find the person with the biggest voice and the most likely to rebel to sit at the table. I don't care if they're the janitor, they're the chef in the kitchen. Find the person who's most passionate about who they are, their culture, their heritage, and passionate about the organization. Those two combinations, and you have a champion for this work. You have a leader that will lead. Don't look for the people who are the bossiest. Look for the person who's passionate because they're going to lead with and be influential in the space. And also, take the people that are most uncomfortable in executive leadership. I'm gonna repeat that because I've done exceptional work, transformational to people's heart with the people that I've knocked on their door and said, I'm gonna stick you in the African American resource group as the executive sponsor. And I've had some candid conversations where that executive sponsor was like, hey, I don't know much about this space. I'm not comfortable leading. I was like, that's exactly why I need you. I need you to understand a whole other community. I need you to rub alongside it. I need you to show up at Black History Month celebration, and I need you to present. And when we do Diwali celebrations for our Asian Pacific Islanders, I need you to dance in the Diwali celebration and wear the cultural dress. So you seek out your champions and your executive leaders. If they're uncomfortable, it's going to work out just fine. Appoint those champions. Give them people. You don't recognize the power of giving someone a title. I called my ERG leads at my organization. They were called ERG leads when I got there. I said, I'm going to call you guys a council. And you should see this excitement and this importance set in, right? And as in the community that formed by simply calling them a council and calling them leaders, right? And letting them actually lead decisions for themselves. The next step is engage. Getting employees engaged, getting your leadership engaged. A lot of organizations go wrong here, where that's volunteerism. You got your employees down here, your individual contributors volunteering, taking pictures. I want to see the white man in the suit that sits in C-suite out there, digging up the dirt or hammering on that house at Habitat for Humanity. The same thing goes from your corporate giving also to your employee resource groups. When I look at your photos on your page, I'm going to look for your CEO in a background with employees that do not look like them. Because as a person who may be a job seeker, who feels like they're talented, I'm watching your organization in ways that you cannot even fathom without one of your employee resource groups having a voice and saying, this is what diverse candidates are looking for. Commit to this work. This work changes. It's hard. You definitely will run into people that I like to always assume positive intention. And even through that positive intention, people are very uncomfortable, right? When we start talking about things like white privilege, people get a little uncomfortable, right? And I like to say, rather than kind of force this work on someone, I like to say, well, I step into their perspective and I look at it from this lens. If I've been told and been given this ideology of privilege, there's something that you say, I get, that no one else gets. I may not want to acknowledge it, but I may not be comfortable understanding what the world looks like if I'm not in this position. I have this saying, second place is first place loser, right? So what happens when I don't have this privilege? Someone needs to be able to have candid conversations. The people that feel that way are the ones you need to get to commit to learning, to get to commit engaging, to get to having conversations. Those are the people who are really going to sponsor your people in your employee resource groups.
Tasha, you're up next.
Sure. I think what you're driving home, Yante, is like optics matter, like who's showing up, who's engaged in this work, and how do I see that? And it really takes all of us. You heard allyship mentioned, but I think it's important to note that we're not all on the same journey. So a lot of times where I tell people is like, what's within your capacity to engage in this work as an individual? So personally, how can you engage in this work? Operationally, if you're a director or a leader, how can you engage in this work where you drive, you manage up and you perhaps manage down and driving this commitment forward? And then if you've been in your industry for 25, 30 years and you have a sphere of influence, and executive sponsors, we keep saying that, but if you've got a network that can really lift up others who are looking for those opportunities to grow, to shift their trajectory within the organization and within their community, how do you engage? And so this is really intended to help give you some ideas of like, if you're trying to close feedback loops, how can you do that personally? Or how can you do that as a leader of a department or a team? How can you do that if you are a CEO and you've got a wide reach of influence? And so this is just an idea of like seeing how it's possible to engage in this work. And ERGs aren't check boxes. They are opportunities to drive your commitments forward and to come together as an organization in what are the goals? What are our commitments? What are the actions? How can I listen to the community who's saying what's missing? What are the gaps? Because that's what makes us more innovative organizations. That's what makes us more inspiring communities. And I believe that everyone in this room is committed to that work. So let's do this. Let's do this.
Thank you so much, you guys, for all of your answers. And we will have time for Q&A here in just a minute. But I do want to just mention our kind of like affinity groups. Like I said, they're kind of internal and external at Mile High United Way, but also really great ways if you don't have anything and you're thinking, oh, we want a young professionals group. We have our link group at Mile High United Way. Come to they have article clubs, they have, lunch and learns, all these fun things happening to kind of like have ideas on how to start that group, but also come, join the community, learn about community issues. Same with Women United. I want to mention too, I know Yante said something about having budget for your ERG groups. We do work with, and I know EY is here because they did a session with their professional women's group, and they asked for more budget for their ERG, and we did an amazing like kit build with them, a STEM specifically, for kind of a solar system for kids to make because they didn't have the supplies at school. So we put kits together with their group, and they're very involved. They sponsored our Women United luncheon, again, with working with our Women United group, but also having their really powerful internal group as well. We also have Catalyst Society and our Tocqueville Society, which, they're also, philanthropic. People like to join them and fund things in the community, but they also get together and network. And so I think this is also a great group too, if like you're thinking about starting a different networking group, or hey, come ask us questions. We'd love to like help and brainstorm starting your internal groups, but also like, again, come join us. A lot of our events are free and you can come learn more about our groups as well. Takeaways, and I don't want to spend too much time because I do want to get to Q&A, but we did kind of bucket them in authenticity, connection, teamwork, causes in common, strategy, and amplify. Again, you will be getting these slides. So these kind of put everything that we chatted about in little groups so you can remember and kind of check your notes on maybe what you want to bring back to your companies or organizations. We will do Q&A now. So I'm going to walk around with this microphone so y'all can say it loud and clear for our virtual folks.
Hello, everyone. Courtney Leeson Helpin with the Community Impact Fund. Love the topics today. I think we're all coming out of pandy, we're all going to use your word now. Still recognizing the presence of a great hybrid workforce, right? So we've always had teams that are spread out, but what are some of the successes you've seen in your own experiences bringing people together as they're working from home within these groups, recognizing that everyone has different needs and different ways of connecting?
I'll go first real quickly. So yeah, we're still very much in a hybrid work environment, but we do have a large section of our employees that have been on the front lines the entire time. I think I've found actually a lot of success through offering things virtually and in person. I think it's widened accessibility and flexibility for people. And so we don't have just our folks at 1800 coming for a lunch. We were able to have other people from across the state participate. So I think we're still struggling to find the sweet spot of when people are in the office. But I think for us, it's really kind of trying shit out and just seeing what works and what people are interested in.
I can get really bored in a virtual environment. I'm gonna be really honest, right? And so as a corporate giving professional, knowing how my brain operates, I made sure that the virtual opportunities oftentimes that I planned with my audience in a way, it was like engaging. I'm very childlike, I'm gonna be honest. So it's like Jeopardy. Can we do a Jeopardy event for this fundraiser that people will tune in, that they can engage in, that they can laugh, that there's some stimulus, right? That's a good way to get people to engage that are virtually, and bringing them in person to do that as well. People are always looking for entertainment. Make it entertaining, you can increase your engagement. In my current organization, we have no problem getting our people together. And I think that has to do with the fact that our CEO, our CFO, all these people, when they're traveling across the country, they get involved. Like my CEO wears tennis shoes that has a QR code on it and a matching blazer, and he gets involved. So if we're playing a basketball game, we put together basketball games with teams with our ERGs or our DICE chapters, and he'll get involved. They'll play. They're as amped for the competition and as amped for the engagement as everyone else. When you start seeing Bonnie and I all the time trying to move this boulder all the time, the reality is people actually really want to impress leaders, right? They really want to show up. They really want to be seen. Let's just be really honest. If the leaders, executive leaders aren't participating, that's going to have an impact on your engagement. So get them involved, number one. Number two, in your hybrid environment, make it engaging so you don't lose people like me that may be sitting behind the screen. I'm hybrid, but if I'm sitting behind the screen and you're just talking, you're going to lose me, right? I may start checking emails. But if I see that there's something exciting going on, like, Tasha talking about how sexy Excel energy is, that would have got my attention, right? So just adding a fun component, adding something engaging, and getting your leaders engaged, I think really drives engagement.
I have some from the chat too. So I'm going to do one from the chat and then I'll grab one from the audience. How do you make ERGs actionable and not just a space to air grievances and make it more enriching for employees?
Yeah, I think you make ERGs actionable, and I'll just reiterate it, right? What are your goals for your ERG? How do they align with the company's commitments? And then what are the programs and the events and the activities that need to happen to drive those goals forward, and who's responsible for those? And then you create an action plan. This is the action plan for this ERG, for this committee, for this council. This is what we're going to do over the course of the year. And I always encourage folks, and whether it's every month or every quarter, you're checking back on how are we following through on what we said we were going to do this quarter, this month. And then I think it's so important to have some type of a reporting structure, making sure that leadership or executives are getting an update on those metrics, on those measurements, so that they're in the trenches knowing, oh, this group is, they're doing the work, they're driving our value, they're helping, actualize our commitments, and that'd be my answer. You guys have anything to add? Yeah. Yeah, I've seen goals around professional development. So what can we do around professional development? How can we grow within this organization? There have been goals around how can we impact, influence hiring? Can we present candidates? Can we be aware of positions that are open and present candidates to the organization, candidates to the board? You need to diversify your board composition. Can we help with that? Because I know some outstanding individuals who would be dynamic on your board, right? So I think those have been some examples of goals. So thank you for that question, Liz. Yeah.
Following behind Natasha on actionable, the organization SSA, we actually, to mean what we say and say what we meant, we built an apprenticeship program. And the apprenticeship program takes our young ones. We got kids that start working for us at 14, 18, 20, 21 on up. It takes our hourly workers, the grinders, right? The people flipping our burgers, the people in our retail shops working, and we groom them into leadership. When they apply, we identify, hey, they've got passion, they've got talent, they're diverse. So we are grooming our own. We are creating our own D&I program. We are also diversifying our leadership at the same time. We put them through this apprenticeship program. They go straight from, they may be like let's just say, they may be a catering operator, right? We will, in our apprenticeship program, we make them a catering operations manager instantly. They have 2 mentors. They have an RVP So they have an executive sponsor. They have someone who's already working in that industry right there alongside them. We train them, we groom them, we give them leadership training, we give them financial training, we give them client relations and contract training. We train them for the job while they're doing the job. When they graduate at the end of 12 months, we place them. We relocate them, we pay their relocation cost. We are literally supporting socioeconomic development in our employees, and we are literally grooming our own employees. And that's where that action comes from the ERGs.
There's something really important I want to add to what Yante just shared. This is one of the reasons why I was like, yes, I would love to be your consultant. So they've been doing this work for about a decade. And over a decade, what they discovered was, gosh, why is it that our entry-level employees aren't moving up in leadership? So we're talking like they're entry-level employees who are primarily of color, large majority are women, and they're like, why is this happening? And you know what they did? They got accountable. They said, it's us. It's us. We're not giving them the proper professional development and the tools to understand how to advance within this organization. How can I shift the trajectory and grow within this company so you can retain me, so I can remain loyal and I can remain invested? They were accountable, and they created this proprietary apprenticeship program that helps measure along their courses of when they become proficient to advance to the next module. And then there's a reward in the end.
Bonnie, do you have any extra bits there, or shall we move on?
Thank you.
Good? Okay. I think I saw a hand over. I'm going to go over here, and then I'll come right back to you.
Hi, Lauren Hornet with Wells Fargo. You all have shared so many great things today. Can you talk about maybe some best practices where the CSR leader has been engaged with these ERGs? Because I think a lot of what you're saying resonates, and we wear many hats, but maybe some things that we can really focus on in addition to being that liaison to connect those teams with the leaders.
That's a great question. So I think we haven't done it perfectly, to be honest. I think we've been really intentional about it can honestly be as simple as a phone call or meeting with our business resource groups. I think right now, my counterpart in Minnesota also manages a business resource group. So I think getting folks plugged in on wearing both hats is super helpful. Similar to what Tasha and Yante said before, it's really weaving into our community sponsorships and giving. For me, also, as I have goals and metrics that I need to hit for employee volunteerism and our big event day of service. So how do I get those teams plugged in and really own a project? That's not easily done overnight either. So I think it's really aligning organizations, finding that passion and where those overlap with the business resource group. If there's a champion there, I'll use Daniel, who's on our team, who is probably single-handedly responsible for our visibility during Pride. He's been doing this since he's worked for the company and been a huge advocate, been loud about getting the sponsorships, being in the parade. And Daniel's seen some incredible professional development and being able to lift him up through that avenue and being able to empower him with the funds behind that to make that happen. And he brings 50 Excel employees out to all of our parades. So it's complicated, but it's can be very easy to ask the questions and what are you interested in? How can tell me about the nonprofits that you're interested? How do we leverage that into our grant making process? Again, we don't know everything, so ask those questions and then, back it up.
I'm gonna share my insight because I came from, I'm gonna give them a shout out, CoBank. I was a corporate social responsibility professional there who was heavily ingrained in D&I before I got into that role. Still involved once I got into that role, and they, the executive leadership said, hey, along with my VP of D&I, said, hey, we should make Yante our DEI ambassador in the corporate giving space. So that created that intersectionality between my job in corporate giving and in diversity, equity, inclusion, which meant that I was on every single one of the employee resource group calls. I had my own segment quarterly, at least, where I would present on corporate giving programs, volunteerism. I asked them on these calls, when are we volunteering? When are we engaging? I was directly engaging with their community engagement committees to get them mobilized. I developed the program, the giving program, so that we can give to them so that they can have their own voice in the community. So I think that combination of those two roles made it very, very easy to align in both of those spaces because you have a corporate giving professional who is also ingrained in the D&I space, and it's a part of their job to see into both lenses. And I think that that really, that model works very, very well.
Okay, we'll do one more question, see where we're at. Oh gosh, there's so many hands. And I know I saw you up here too. Okay, well, we're gonna squeeze in two more questions. I know your hand was up. Do you wanna?
Well, Bonnie, I'm like you. I just finished I co-chair the Latinos Unidos for Mortis, and we have 13 offices, and I put my business goal. But some of the practices, and I don't call them best because it works different for every organization, but how we tie our CSR is like we hosted 2 Hispanic Heritage Month conversations virtual, and people assigned to attend the conversations, we count them as volunteering activity, right? Because it's also a role of ERGs, BRGs to educate those who don't identify as that affinity group to understand why you're working with them. So our lunch and learns were the history of Hispanic and the contributions in the United States and the power economically, socially, politically today. So for a lot of people, it was an education process. Like now I understand why people show up like they show up. We also tie our business resource group with organizations that STEM girls, right? With organizations, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, because they're tying to our mission. So it's part of that retention, recruitment. And for some of our people, how we make them really active, people feel like it's my mental check-in. So you have to provide that safe space, but we have allies, but it's also that, and the leadership see us as a resource of like, I have an employee that is not feeling engaged. How can I reach out to a BRG to help me engage them more? We're all learning, but I mean, there's so many different reasons why you have them, but you have to empower them to do it because that's your next leaders. And I say, if you guys don't get your act together, it's not gonna happen.
Always listen to Allie. For Mortensen, her next panel, be sure to attend.
We have time for one more question, but please know that on the last page of our slides, we have all of our LinkedIn links on there, so you can always ask questions after that. Oh my gosh, this is really intense. All right, let's just do them quick. We'll do 2 more. We'll do quick questions. Quick audience.
Yeah, so my question really deals with, you've given some great scenarios on, it's working right or how to make it work right. When you are in that space and it's not working right, especially those who've been in corporate America, how do you get those execs? Because you certainly can't say, hey, scoot over, executive. That person is in that lead position. How do you do that and get them to buy in and what that importance is all about? Talk about that, because this is not a utopianistic world, honey. It takes a bit to get those white men and sometimes white women, depending on what everybody brings all of their entire selves to work. What does that look like?
I'm going to be really honest with you. At times, I found that it's easier for me to get things done with the white men before it is to get things done with a white woman. And I can tell you, I'm thankful that I have business acumen, so I kind of know how executive leadership thinks and what they want to do. And so whenever I'm pushing an initiative that is going to make them uncomfortable or unsure, I make a combination. I'm quite influential and I'm kind of cute. And so I take the business proposition that I know that they want to hear and how it's going to bring value to the organization and make my proposal. And then I tie in the humanity piece and I remind them of their commitments. And so really it's kind of like court in some ways, right? You're coming in with your business strategy, you're coming in with your proposal, and then you're closing the deal. You're speaking to your judge or jury. I'm using everything in a little bit of manipulation too at times.
But I do think there's some repetition that happens, right? So just, I pride myself on being a squeaky wheel. Like, just keep repeating it and making sure that it's presented in a way that aligns with the bottom line or the business initiative. And then I don't need to take credit. When you start saying what I've been telling you 20 times over, I'm like, success, yes, now it is an action because the leader is saying what I've been telling him every meeting, every professional development review, every whatever, right? Like, and so I think just repetition.
I get my credit. I don't know what Tasha talking about.
And I'll just add quickly, that's part of the reason why I'm going to Minnesota, right? Where this is sponsored by our new head of HR who's hosting us. We're meeting with the CEO, so I'll have more after that. But I also think there's some desire for this to be part of our executives' professional development and accountability on their reviews too, on that leadership role. So.
Thank you. Okay, we were gifted 5 more minutes. I'm gonna do you, and then there's an online question that a lot of people want to know, so I'll let you go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kaylin Fern. I'm with the Women's Foundation of Colorado. Something I've seen a lot is employee resource groups feeling like it's just an extra obligation on top of their current job, whether it's having to meet like outside of hours or having to take on tasks that they're not getting compensated for. And so I'm just curious, like within your own organizations, what are you doing so that it doesn't feel like an additional task? Are you supplementing them financially in any way, or what does that look like?
That's a great question. I think for us, the folks that are kind of leading the charge tend to be those ones that want to do more. It doesn't feel like extra work. I know sometimes it does. But I think sticking to our meeting schedule and structure is super important, and making those meetings and events that they're doing meaningful. And I think kind of going back, it's also celebrating the successes and those leaders, and whether it's recognition on our, I drew here from our comms team for our photo of the day, which people love. It's like a photo on our internal website every day, getting articles written up about it. So I think having that visibility and lifting folks up like that, but we're still figuring that out as well. But it is a ton of work, especially as you're building things out. So I think being mindful of that going into the planning process is big.
Tasha, she just knows how I feel about this. I have been a member of an ERG. I have been a lead on the ERG, and it is an exceptionally heavy push. The bigger your ERGs get, the broader your thinking gets, and that's all voluntary. And you get some recognition. You might get a seat at the table. That's great. What I'm doing now for my organization is because having a strong D&I program and process, and it equates to revenue for your organization. It really does. And so my ERG leads will be incentivized. The work that they're doing is not only a place of passion, but it's also additional work on top of their work. And what we're not thinking is, hey, we give you additional overtime. It's more spot bonus is what we're dreaming of, because I kind of feel like in many ways it's oppressive. It's oppressive to have people volunteer on top of their job to serve your organization and drive revenue for your executive leadership and not give them compensation.
I told you we were amongst like-minded. But you got to value the work, right? I know we're speaking the same language, but you're asking the question to share out and tell a friend and tell the folks in the back, right? Like, you got to value the work. And I know organizations, they have in their performance, professional development, when you do your reviews, you get to add stretch goals in there. And if you reach your stretch goals, you get an extra percentage for your bonus. I'm saying you can work this into your bonus structure. You can work this into your salary structure, your merit increase structure. It's not hard. Value the work.
And I feel like this person online must have been thinking the same thing, because really the question is who should be heading up these groups. So you have any last thoughts on, how to get people involved. And if there is an incentive, like what is the structure there, right? Like, is there an application process? How does that work if more people are involved?
I have an ERG blog coming out. Again, it's finding the people that are passionate and really want to move the work. But I'm really curious about this man right here who's had his hand up for a long time, what his question is. This one.
And while you're walking to him, when you said value the work, the flip side of that is show the work is value. And that is why that married.
Yes, show the work.
I couldn't hear that. And I heard like reaction. Show the work is value. Who couldn't hear it? Oh, hey. Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
You
the mic is over
sorry.
there.
So when Tasha was, Gloria Neal, Glow Knows Unlimited, I'm new in the consulting space, former journalist, but what I will say is you talk about value the work, that is that exclamation point, that mic drop, but it also is, when you talk about incentives, it is show the work is valued. And by that, you compensate those who are doing this work because it's not a one and done. It is a journey. They're baby steps that take us to get there and reverse this. And I always tell this to my husband, I am not anti-man, but honey, I am pro-woman when it comes to this work, because I realize we are going to have to be the ones to move the needle. If it was going to happen, it would have already happened. So we're new and coming into a lot of this space, a lot of these conversations. We will have to do this. And there you go. Allies, you guys are great.
Okay. So
Okay,
your
is this
question
on?
back.
Yep. Thank you, by the way. I was sitting here back here raising my hand. So you had mentioned ERGs are, really powerful, obviously, and they're having a voice with employee giving. Fantastic. But what I've seen in my corporate life, and I'm now a business owner myself, is that there's the flip side, that the corporation will give X number of dollars to philanthropies, charities, but then they'll also donate to political campaigns that are completely opposite of the interests of those of us who fit within these ERGs. Are you seeing in this polarized world that we're in an enhanced voice from the ERGs to leadership to stop giving money to campaigns that are counter to the values of not only the corporation, but the ERGs? Is this a happy hour question rather than?
Well, I have seen that. Okay, I have seen that not in the organization that I worked with before. CoBank is really good about not getting into political giving. But I have seen that in organizations that I worked for prior, where it was really against the interests of the populations that they served, and also against the populations within their ERGs. What ends up happening is you cannot retain people. They start recognizing that you're against their interests. The whole point of community impact and community influence and utilizing your ERGs and intersecting that is for your organization to take the voices of the people who don't have voices and cascade that into their communities. And if you're operating against the people in your community, well, your business is going to show, because everyone's watching. People care about this. And so, but I've seen in other places and in other organizations where people are allowed to give, they have a budget. Some of our employee resource groups, when they are directing campaigns as a corporate giving professional, I look at things like, does it represent, I look at it from outside lens. Could this represent a hate organization? Could this have some damage to my organization's risk or an alignment? Could it misrepresent our values? So someone has to always have oversight over that giving and look at it from a critical lens. We allow them to direct, yes, but we make sure that it does not put us in a place where one organization is showing hate for another. We just will not accept that. We will not cascade that out.
And with that, I think we've covered a lot of ground. So thank you all so much for us today.
Oh my goodness. It's a good panel when people aren't bolting to the door to get lunch. So with that, we want to thank you all. Again, this was phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. So one more round of applause. think this is a core business function. This is not a club. This is not a nice to have. This is work is a need to have. So lunch buffet outside of the room. You can go head over back into the main ballrooms to eat lunch. There's table topics. If you really want to dive into a specific conversation, they're sort of all focused on different areas of this work, or you can just sit wherever, sit with a friend. After lunch is our third workshop block featuring these sessions, Twice as Nice, Amplifying Impact through Partnerships in the Cripple Creek Room 1, CSR and DEI in Cripple Creek 2, that is very hard to say, and then integrating CSR and ESG in the ballroom. So those sessions will start at 1:15, and then, so go have lunch. Thank you all.